Hi everyone, and welcome to my next video tutorial, which is going to be focused on learning how to create a to-do list task-based application. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Now the first thing we need to do is to go on ahead and create a Django project. Now of course, I have my own style when it comes to creating a Django project, and you can of course go on ahead and set up a Django project in your own fashion, however you prefer. For those that want to follow explicitly as I do, you're more than welcome to, but I just want to mention this earlier on that you do have a choice. Alright, so let's get started. So first I want to go on ahead and on my desktop right click, and I'm going to say new and folder, and I'm going to call my folder dev, of course short for development. So this is how I like to start off with my projects. Then the next thing I want to do is I need to have access to this folder from my command prompt. So I'm going to search from my command prompt, and to search it in a quick fashion, you can type in cmd and then open up your command prompt. There we go. So now what I want to do is I just want to restructure this. And I can see I am in my command prompt as of now, and I want to type CLS, and CLS is a command you can use to just clear your terminal. Very helpful if you have lots of code output here and you just want to clear everything from scratch. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to head on over to our dev directory here. So to do so, we need to utilize the cd command, which stands for change directory. Now we can see this dev folder is currently on our desktop. So we first need to go to the desktop, then into the dev folder. So it's a structure of location. So first we can say cd desktop, press enter, and now we're on the desktop. Now let's head on over to dev. So I'm going to say cd dev, press enter, and now I'm within dev. So this is what we want to do first of all. And the whole purpose of this is to ensure that we set up our virtual environment in my dev folder and also the Django project in the dev folder. That's the purpose of this. So let's clear that up. Great. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to ensure that we're able to create virtual environments. Now our virtual environment is going to house all of the packages that are unique to that particular Django project that we are utilizing. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to first of all install the package for creating virtual environments in Django per se. And to do so, you need to say pip install virtual env, just like that. Okay, and this is going to install the virtual env library / package for creating virtual environments for your Django projects. Now notice here we are installing it globally, but in our case we have to install it globally. But as a best practice, when we are installing all of the native packages for our Django application itself, okay, we need to install it in a virtual environment. But we have to install the virtual env or the virtual env package globally to utilize virtual environment. So in this case, it's okay, it's exempt. But with all of your other packages and libraries, it needs to be within the virtual environment itself, which I'll show you now. So let's clear this up now. So now what we want to do is, since we have the virtual env library installed, we can create a virtual environment, and that's always done with the following command, which is virtual env, and then you can add in a space and then add in a name for your virtual environment that you want to create. So in my case, I'm going to say venv as an example. You can give this any name that you wish and press enter, and that's going to create a virtual environment for us, and it's going to be situated in our dev directory / folder. So sometimes it can be quite fast in the process of creating the virtual environment. Other times it can be quite slow. So all we need to do is wait and be patient, and then we can continue with the rest of the process. So let's just wait for that to be completed. And there we go. So we can see it's set up and ready to go. So now what we can do is activate our virtual environment. So I'm going to show you how to activate and deactivate it. So the name that we specified here, as we can see, is venv. So to activate it, you would refer to the name you gave it. So my virtual environment is called venv. So I can say venv /scripts /activate and press enter. And now you can see here on the left hand side that we have a slight indentation with venv in parentheses in place. So that means our virtual environment is active, and you should always from now on install all the packages via pip within your virtual environment. So make sure you see this before you run, for example, pip install any package that you have from now on. All right, so that's how you activate your virtual environment. So let's clear this up. And to deactivate it, you can say venv /scripts / and then you can say deactivate. and that's going to deactivate it. As you can see here, we're no longer in our virtual environment. And to activate it again, you can just say venv /scripts /activate like so. All right, so that's how you can manage your virtual environments. So let's clear this up. And now we want to install Django. So what you can do is say pip install Django and press enter. Okay, so the thing is, when you install Django, it also has a lot of other packages associated with it. So it's not just going to install Django itself, it's going to install a lot of other packages that are along with it. So as you can see here, we have a few other packages, as you can see below Django here, that have been specified accordingly here. So we just need to be patient as those packages get installed within our virtual environment and our Django project. All right, perfect. So as you can see here, our Django package was installed. So Django has been installed essentially from the from pip. Okay, perfect. So let's clear this up. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and create our Django project. So I always like to say Django-admin start project, and I like to give my project a name. So I'm going to go on ahead and decide a name here, and I'm going to call it To-Do and press enter. There we go. So we can now see that Django project has been created. So let's just validate this before we continue. So what you can do is minimize your CMD, go to your dev folder, and within it you should see your Django project called To Do and your virtual environment here as well. So let's close that up and let's open this up in an IDE. So I use Visual Studio Code, so I'm going to go ahead and open that up. So you can use whatever you wish. However, I'd recommend for consistency and clarity in this video tutorial that you just follow along explicitly as I do. So then you can go to File, you can navigate to Open Folder, go to Desktop and open Dev and say Select Folder. Okay, and as you can see now, we now have our dev folder here. We now have our Django project, and we also have our virtual environment here, and we can now see this all graphically, you could say, in a user interface. So now what we want to do is we want to cd in this to-do project here, this Django project, so change the directory. As you can see, we're currently in dev. We want to go now into to-do. So what you can do is say cd to-do, clear this up, and there we are. We're currently right in here. Let's open up To-Do, and now we want to run our manage.py file so that we'll be able to get our server up and running. So what you can do is go on and say Python manage.py run server. Okay, and that's going to activate our Django server, and there we go. And we can also see we'll be able to access it at the following URL. And what we can do is just minimize this, and as you can see, it generates an SQLite database for us by default as soon as you run your Django server for the first time. So I'm just going to copy this URL that I have right here, go to Google, and I'm just going to paste it in, press enter, and there we go. So we can now see that our Django project has been installed and we've got everything up and running. So we've got that all set up and ready to go. So make sure you're up to this stage here and that you've got everything in place. All right, so let's continue. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to go on ahead and create a Django app. So what we can do is head on over to Visual Studio Code, and we can open up our command prompt here and just close this. So you can press Ctrl+C to stop this and clear this up. Now what you can do is you can go ahead and run the following command, which is Django-admin start app, and you want to give your app a name here. So I'm going to call this tasks, and this is going to house all of the functionality that we're going to utilize in terms of our models, URLs, views, etc. for setting up our tasks, including our model. So make sure you've gone ahead and started that up. Then what you can do is you can go ahead and head on over to your to-do subdirectory here and open up settings.py. And as you can see here, we have that tasks app that was just created. So all you want to do is reference that in your list of installed apps. So I just want to remove this comment here. And you can just scroll down until you see installed apps, and you just want to add in tasks to it. So we can just go ahead and do tasks and a comment at the end. So make sure you've gone ahead and done just that. All right, great. So we've got that set. Now I always like to just run my server afterwards just to make sure I configured it correctly. Even though it is set correctly, it's just a bit of a habit here. So let's just run that. and it's running, and let's just refresh. Okay, we're good. All right, so that is how you can go ahead and set up your Django app. So we can go ahead and close this up here, and that's what we need to do for the moment. Right, now the next thing that we want to do is we want to set up our URL and view routing. So let's go ahead and set that up into place. So we can head on over to our app, which is called Tasks, and we want to create a urls.py file here so that we can configure all the URLs from our task app, and we can create an entry point in our main to do urls.py file. So just to give you some insight, if you go to your subdirectory here of to do, go to your urls.py file, you can see we have a large comment here. So let's just remove that. And this is essentially our main urls.py file for a Django application. As you can see here, it houses our admin URL as well. But what we want to do is we want to add in all of our URLs, not in our main urls.py file, but rather keep it at the app level of tasks here. And we're going to create a urls.py file in tasks and ensure that it's routed correctly to our main urls.py file. So what we can do is head on to tasks here, and you can just close that. We can just right click on it, say new file, and you can call it urls.py. Okay, and that's all that you need to do for now. So just make sure you've created a urls.py file in your task directory. As you can see, it's right here. So make sure you've created that. Next, you can go to your subdirectory of to do, open up your main urls.py file right next to your tasks urls.py file, and as you can see the directory of both of them, so you can see it's in to do in the tasks app urls.py. This one here is in your subdirectory of to do your urls.py file, so you can understand the process. Now what we want to do is we want to tell Django, hey, I want you to include all of the URLs that I define in this urls.py file in my tasks app right here. I want you to include that in my main urls.py file here. So what you need to do is utilize the include function. So it comes from the Django.urls module. So right next to the parse function, you can add in a comma and say include. And then you just want to define that URL, so that parse, and you're going to add in the parse function. And what you can do is set the route name as an empty string, and then you just want to say include, and in parentheses, you want to include the following, which is going to be from the tasks app. So you're going to say here in strings tasks dot, and then you want to scroll down and reference urls.py. So you're just going to say URLs. You want to include all the URLs that we will define in this particular file here. And then just make sure at the end that you go ahead and add in a comma, and you just want to make sure you remove that S at the end. So you have tasks.urls. Okay, so that is what you want to do in the next phase. So make sure you've got that set up and into place. Very important that you do that. Next thing that we want to do is we actually want to create a simple web page by configuring our URLs and our views with a HTTP response. So what we can do is go ahead and close this urls.py file. And what you want to do is you want to open up, we can close this to do, you want to open up your views.py file. Okay, and let's just keep our urls.py file here and our views.py file that both come from this tasks app. Okay, so first thing that we can do is we can go ahead and create our view. So we can just remove this text here, and you just want to say from Django.http. So from the Django.http module, you want to import the HTTP response function here. Then you want to go on ahead and create a view, and I'm going to call it create the function def index. So that's going to imply my home page, and we want to be able to pass in a request, add in a colon, and then you want to, instead of saying return render, we're going to just for the moment say return HTTP response. And here is the response we want to return, and I'm just going to set it as hello world. Very simple. Just like such. So make sure you've created a basic view, and then we want to configure this view with our URL here. So what we can do is go to your urls.py file, and you first need to import the parse function so we can create a URL, and that is going to be from the Django.urls module. So you can just say from Django.urls import path. Then you want to import all of the views that have been declared or defined in your views.py file. So to do that, you can just say from dot import views. Now you're probably wondering, okay, why are we just saying from dot? The reason for that is if you look here in our tasks app, the urls.py file that we're using is in the same directory as our views.py file. They're in the same directory, so you can just say from dot and then import views. Okay, great. So let's continue. And the next thing that you want to do is you want to create your URL patterns list, which will house all your URLs. So you can just say URL patterns equals and set that as a list. And then you want to create your first URL with the parse function that you imported. And that is going to have an empty string at the beginning. And then you want to say views dot and then refer to the view that you want to output here in the URL. And in our case, it's called index. So you can just say views dot index, and then you can add in a name to it as well to reference this URL. And I'm going to say name equals, and I'm just going to leave it as a blank empty string. Just make sure at the end you add in a comma. All right, so this is our basic URL and view routing in place. So make sure you've got this set up. So just to test everything, now if we just restart our server, so just press Ctrl+C and rerun it. There we go. You can now head on over to your homepage, refresh, and here we can see hello world. So that indicates that it worked and everything's in place. So just to have a quick recap over what we've done with URL and view routing, you can just head on over to your directory and let's see what we have here from the start. So in our to-do subdirectory here, in our urls.py file here, we define the following. We imported the include function so that we can include all of the URLs that are defined in the tasks app here, which is right here, and specifically that all the URLs that have been defined within it. That is what we're doing here at the main urls.py file. That's going to allow us to go on ahead and utilize our own URLs here in our tasks app. And we also went on ahead and set up our views here just to set up a basic homepage here for our application just to start off with. So that's the first thing that you want to ensure that you set up before we continue. The next thing that we're going to do is perform template rendering. So that is what we're going to go on ahead and do next. So we can just close this up because we're going to follow a specific process of handling that. Now, the next thing that we want to do is set up templates in our Django project. Now, there are two ways in which you can configure your templates. You can either configure them at the project level or you can configure them at the app level. I always prefer to set them up at the app level. It's just a bit more convenient and my preference. However, you can decide what you want to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to head on over to our tasks app here. And what you can do is right click on it, say new folder, and you want to call this templates. Now it is case sensitive, so you need to type it as is, so templates. And essentially Django is automatically going to know where to find all the templates and how to configure them. So all of the templates that you specify here, your HTML templates, it's automatically going to be recognized by Django. So it's also a very simple approach. So that is what you're going to want to do. So that is how you can set up app-based app level template rendering. Now we just want to create one HTML file for the moment, and it's going to be called tasks.html. That will encompass all of our tasks. So you can right click on templates, say new file, then tasks.html and enter. Okay, so that's how you can go about setting that up. So very important, so make sure you've gone ahead and set that up. And what we can do here at the moment is we can just put in a h1 tag here that says tasks with a colon. All right, very simple. So that's how you can do that. Now, what we can do next, of course, is we can go on ahead and just render out this template. So what we can do is we can just head on over to our views.py file. Let's move this right next to it. And what we can do here is instead of returning this HTTP response, we can go ahead and render out a template. So we can go ahead and say render. We're going to use the request and we're going to look for this task.html file. Now, you don't need to specify templates. Django automatically knows to look in here. So you just need to reference that name of that template. So in quotes, you can just put in tasks index.html as it is specified right here. Then what you can do is go ahead and just manually restart your server just for clarity. So let's do that. There we go. Let's go to our application and refresh. And there we go. We can now see we're rendering out our template now. So it's showing tasks as we have specified right here. So that's how you can go ahead and set up your templates at the app level here for your template. All right. Great, so we've got that set up. Now the next thing that we want to do is we just want to migrate our default database files and create a super user to access the Django admin. So what you can do is head on over to your command prompt, stop your server, and when you run python manage.py run server, I just want to show you something. So as soon as you run that command, you're going to see here that you probably saw this in the beginning, that it says you have 18 unapplied migrations. So this is going to pertain to the list of installed apps that we have, which pertain to our admin, auth, content types, and sessions. Now all we need to do is migrate them, so you can run python manage.py migrate. So let's stop the server and run that command. So this is just going to migrate all of our default database files. So you can say python manage.py migrate, and it's going to push those database files. There we go. So it's done that. Perfect. Right, so we've got that set. Now what we want to do is we want to create a super user so that we can access our Django admin. So to do that, you can say python manage.py create super user, and you can press enter. Okay, and then you want to give your super user a name. I'm going to call it Anna. Email is optional. I'm going to skip it so you can press enter, and I'm going to enter in a password. And once you've entered it in, press enter, and you want to enter it again. There we go. And for clarity, let's run our server. And just keep in mind your super user credentials. There we go, and we can now head on to our application, and let's go to our admin page. So you can put in /admin, and just enter in now your super user credentials. So I'll zoom in here, so just be sure to enter that in. And once you've entered in those credentials, you can go ahead and log in to your Django admin. And here we are. Okay, so we'll later revisit this Django admin panel here to see our registered models and our objects. So just make sure you're able to log in and that you've created your super user. So we can log out now. So that was just to get that all into place and set it up. Okay, so make sure that you've migrated your database files and that you've created a super user and that you've accessed your Django admin. Very important. So we can go ahead and close all of this up. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to create a model. Now our model is essentially going to be a database table of sorts, which is going to pertain to our tasks. So it's going to be a task model, and with that task model, we'll be able to create objects or instances of that particular model. So let's go and create our task model. So we can navigate to our app tasks, then we can go to our models.py file. And what we can do is we can go on ahead and create our model, which is essentially going to be a database table of sorts. And then we're going to define our attributes, which are kind of like our fields. So let's go ahead and do that. Now to create a model, it's going to be based off a class. So we can say class, and I'm going to call mine task. And then I'm going to inherit models.model, which is going to give us the ability to create our own custom Django model. Then I want to define my attributes, which are also known as our fields. So remember the class task, so that's our model name, is essentially like a database table name. And now we're going to define the attributes, which are similar to fields. So first one is going to be the title, and I'm going to say equals, and I'm going to set the data type. So that's going to be models.char field. And I'm going to set a max length here within parentheses. So I'm going to say max underscore length. And I'll set that to 200. Then I want to add in another attribute, and that's going to be completed. So I'm going to say completed equals, and it's going to be models.boolean field. Okay, so we're going to use a boolean for true or false, so two states. And the default I'll set here in parentheses will be false. Then I want to set a created attribute, so it can be created or whether it has been set up at an appropriate time. So we can say created equals, and I'm going to say models dot, and I'm going to use the date time field as my data type, and I'm going to set it as auto underscore now underscore add, and I'm going to set that to true. So immediately once this task gets published, it's going to store in our database the created time. Perfect. Then what I want to do is I want to create a string message. So I'm going to say def double underscore str double underscore pass through self colon, and I want to return the title of each of my objects. I'm going to say return self dot title, and the reason I'm setting this as such is because I don't want it to show object 1, object 2, object 3 in my Django admin. I want it to return for each object instance that is created the title of each of those tasks. Okay, so make sure you've gone ahead and set that up accordingly. So that is the model that we need to set up, and the next thing that we need to do is make our migrations and migrate this model. So you can open up your Explorer here in your directory, and I want you to keep in mind here this migrations folder. So as of this moment, there's nothing in it. So we want to, first of all, go on ahead and we want to push this model to our database. But before we can do that, we need to create the structure, which is to make the migration. So you can head on over to your command prompt, stop the server, and you can run python manage.py make migrations. And that's going to migrate this model, which is task. So we can see our model task was created, and it made a migration in the migrations folder of our tasks app known as 0001 underscore initial.py. So if you go to migrations here, you can go to this structure here. So you can see this migration of your database. So automatically it will have an ID set. So that is what happens in Django by default with models. We'll have our title attribute, our completed attribute, and created attribute set. All right, so that is the model that's going to be migrated to our database. So this is the structure for it. So to push this particular model to our database, what you want to do is head on over to your terminal and say python manage.py migrate, and that's going to push it to your database. Perfect. So we've got that set. So we've now created officially our task model. Now we need to go on ahead and register this task model in Django admin so that we'll be able to view it and house all of our records/objects. So what you can do is head on over to your directory, and here you can see also in your let's just close this. In your tasks app, you can see there's an admin.py file in the same directory, so we can move that to the side. And what you want to do is you want to go ahead and import your model. So what you can do is you can just say here at the top from, and models.py is in the same directory as admin.py. So in admin.py you can say from, and then you can just say dot models. So from this models.py file, you want to import the task model here referenced by this class. So you can just say task. There we go. Now we can register this model. So from this admin function here, from the Django.contrib module, you want to say admin.site.register, and in parentheses, you just want to pass through task. So that's going to register our task model, which we've defined here, so that we can see it in our database. So what you can do now is you can go ahead and run your server. So python manage.py run server, just make sure everything's working. Great. Now you can head on over to your admin.py file. So you can put /admin. Then you can enter in your superuser credentials once again. Perfect. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and log into the Django admin. And as you can see now, we have our task app right here. So let's just zoom in for clarity. So if I scroll down, we can see we have our task app. Now it is set into place, so we can see tasks, and we can see our model here, tasks as well. Now keep in mind we did call it task, but in Django what happens is for each model that we register with Django admin, it appends an S to that model. So please don't be confused here, but remember tasks here is pertaining to our app here, and within that is going to be the models which we register within that particular app. And just remember, like I said, it's going to automatically append an S onto that model. Okay, so now we can click on our model task. And here you can add tasks as you so desire. So you can go ahead and add in a few. So we can do that as a test. I just want to clear it up. So I'm going to say add task. And here you can add in a particular task and say if it's completed or not. So here I'm just going to say, let's say complete video tutorial. And I'm going to mark it as completed and say save. There we go, complete tutorial. And the reason why you're seeing it as complete video tutorial, it's rendering out the title instead of saying object 1, object 2. And the reason for that is because here in the string method that we defined within our model, it is returning the title each time this model, a model or record gets created when you add a task. So let's go on again and let's say here, buy food. I'm going to leave it unchecked, save. And let's add another task, and here I'm going to say watch movies, and I'm going to say leave it as uncompleted and say save. Okay, so just add random things here. It can be anything that you wish. So you just want to add in a few objects and just populate your you want to populate all the objects here accordingly so we can output them and render them in our template accordingly. So make sure you've created a few tasks here, as you can see, very important. Okay, once you've done so, you can go ahead and log out, head on straight to your homepage here. And what we can do for now is we can just close this up. So we just want to finalize that step. So there we go. We've gone ahead and created our tasks in Django admin. And we've also just gone ahead and created our model, registered our model, created the tasks and gotten all of that into place. Now, the next thing that we want to focus on is just rendering our tasks in our template so that we'll be able to see all the tasks down here. So that's the next thing that we want to get ready and set up accordingly. Right. So let's go on ahead and render our tasks within our template. So what we can do is head on over to our app, then we can scroll down to our views.py file. And what we want to do is also open up our models.py file as well, just here for reference. So we want to import our task model from our models.py file. As you can see, it's in the same directory. So in our views.py file, what we can do right at the top here, so let's just go on here. We can say from .models import task, so our task model that we have defined here. Great. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and perform a query here based on our task model here. And what we're going to do is go ahead and create a variable of sorts. So I'm going to say tasks equals, and we want to refer to our task model. So we're going to do a query that says task dot, and I want to get all of the objects within that task. So you will need to say dot objects dot all and open and close your parentheses, and that's going to retrieve all of those tasks that we just specified in Django admin, and it's going to be set to tasks here. Now we want to ensure that we'll be able to output them. So right here in the render request here, so we are going to make a request to render out our task.html file. We also want to pass through all of our tasks here. So what I like to do is always create a context dictionary first. I'm going to say context equals, and within my curly braces, I'm going to create a key value pair. So the key here I'm going to set as tasks, and that's what we're going to reference directly in my task.html file. And the value, okay, you need to denote a colon and then specify the value, and the value is going to be from tasks right here. So I'm going to pull that in as follows. So now I want to return all of my tasks, and I want to pass that through to my task.html template. So I'm going to add in my context here to pass it through. And to reference all of my tasks is I'm going to use my key here. So whatever you call your key here, you're going to reference in your HTML accordingly. So what I can do is go to my directory, and I can head on over to my templates directory, open up tasks.html, and now I want to output my task. So this is going to take the shape of a for loop. So what you can do is create a for loop. So you're going to say for, and then you can give it any name to loop through it. So I'm going to say task, and I'm going to say in, and now you need to be very careful and refer to the key that you specified here. So I'm calling it tasks. So I'm going to say for task in tasks. And then at the end, I'm going to just say end for. And now for the content itself, so I want to output my tasks. So I'm just going to simply create a paragraph tag, and right here in double curly braces either side, I'm going to say task. Okay, that's all I need to do. And then what I want to do now is I want to restart my server. Go, and we can head on over to the web page here, refresh, and here I can see all of my tasks. So it's outputting my tasks, so complete a video tutorial, buy food, and watch movies. So it's outputting all of my tasks accordingly as they should be output. Now, if you want to be a little bit more specific with what you're outputting, you can also at the bottom specify the various attributes. So it's outputting the objects itself. So let's say you want to show title and let's say completed and created, for example. We can just specify it by saying .title, .completed, .created. So let's go on here. And right at the bottom here, I'm just going to go ahead and add in two more. So this is, I'm going to say task dot. So we have title, and title has already been specified, so we don't need to set that again because we're returning that object, but you can say dot completed, for example, and let's just refresh. And then it's going to show whether it has been completed or not. And you can also then at the end say the creation time. So task dot created. Okay, and you can refresh here, and there we go. We can see those tasks if they were completed. Now, what you can do here is you can just add in some HTML for the time being, saying is completed, and that will just look a little bit cleaner here. So you're going to say yes, yes, yes. Okay, so that is how you can go about the process. Now we are able to see the task title because in our models.py we're returning that each object by the title. But if you want to be specific and say dot title, you can do that as well. So you can say task dot title if you want to implicitly refer to it accordingly. And refresh, it's going to show the same thing, but that's just going to follow a more structured sort of approach when handling this. So that's just something I wanted to go through so that you're aware of it. But let's go ahead and just leave it as it was before, just to keep it simple. So I'm just going to leave it at task here, and I'm just going to refresh and leave it there so I can see my tasks. Okay, so this is how you can go ahead and render your tasks in your template accordingly. Now the next thing that we want to do is create a model form. So what we can do for now is just close all of this up. Here we go, and close that. And let's go ahead now and create a model form. So what you would typically do is you would create a forms.py file in your app. So here in tasks, I'm going to right click, say new file, and I want to call this forms.py. There we go. And what I'm going to do in this forms.py file is I'm going to create a model form, which is a form representation of a model. In our case, it's going to be task. So we can reference that again. So we can put models.py here. Okay. And essentially speaking, this form is going to encompass all the model's attributes. So in our case, as we can see, we have title, completed, and created. So let's go ahead and set up this form accordingly. So first of all, we need to import a few things. So from Django, we want to import forms. So they'll be able to integrate and manipulate a particular form element. Then I want to say from Django.forms, so from the Django.forms module, I want to import a model form. After which I want to import my model, which of course is known as task. So I can just say here from .models import task. Okay, so remember forms.py is in the same directory as models.py, so you can just go ahead and reference it accordingly. Great, so let's create our model form now. So I'm going to give it the name of, so we need to instantiate it or define it with a class. So I'm going to give it a name called task form. You can give it any name that you wish for the class, and then we're going to inherit forms.model form so that we'll be able to create our own custom model form. Then all we want to do is, the first thing is we want to set the title as a text input to ensure that we can add in a new title. So I'm going to say title equals, and from forms.char field, so that's going to be the data type, I want to add in a widget, and that's going to be based on forms.text input. And I then want to specify the attribute for that. So I'm going to say attrs, and that's going to be equals to, and in my, I'm going to then ensure that I add in a curly brace. And that's going to house a placeholder, and this will make more sense in a moment. I'm going to add in a placeholder. So let's do that. And I'm going to then, outside that, add in the value of the placeholder, which is going to be, let's say, add in a new task. Okay, and then what I want to do is ensure that I have closed this up. So I should have a curly brace here. I should have a parentheses and another parentheses at the end. So make sure you've configured this as follows here, so you can see now a bit clearly. I have zoomed out now so you can see the process of what you need to add in for this line. Okay, very important that you add that into place. Okay, so let's continue. So now what we want to do is we want to go on ahead and we want to specify our metadata. So right in line here of title, we can go ahead and say class meta. Okay, and we want to specify the model that we want to be working with. I'm going to say model equals task because we've imported task. And then we want to define the fields, the attributes that we want to use. So from title, completed and created, we want to use all of them. So you can just say fields equals, and in double quotes, you can just add in double underscore, say all, double underscore, and save. Okay, so make sure you've gone ahead and set that up as follows. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue. So now that we have our model form completed, we want to render this form in our template. So what we can do is go to our views.py file first. And let's move that here. And we want to import our form. So right here up top in our views.py file, you want to just go ahead and say from.forms import, and the name of the class here for the form was task form here. So you can just say import task form. There we go. Now what you want to do is you want to go on ahead and ensure that you add in your form into place. So right here under our view, we want to create a variable called form, and we want to bind in that task form like follows. Then we want to be able to render this into our template here, which is task.html. So we're going to include it in our context dictionary here. So again, you want to set your key value pair. So the key is what you reference in the HTML itself. So I'll call it, let me show you something different here to make it more understandable. I'm going to call it task form. And the value here, I'm going to set as form. So you can see a distinction with the key value pairs here. So I'm just going to say form. Okay, and that's automatically going to be loaded to the context, so you can utilize it in your task.html file accordingly. Okay, so what we can do now is we can go ahead and open up our template, which is task.html. And here it is. And what we want to do is we just want to make an adjustment. We want to set up a form. So what I'm going to do is, for the time being, I'm just going to go on ahead and adjust this process here. So I'm just going to, right up top here, create a form. So I'm going to say form. And the method here is going to be that of a post request. So we'll deal with creating tasks in a moment. And the action here, we're going to set as the following. So it's going to be at the home page here. So we're going to leave it empty. Okay, and then I want to pass through my CSRF token, and that's going to ensure we don't have CSRF attacks or anything of the sort. And then what I want to do is I just want to add in my form title. So I'm going to say form.title. Okay, and then I want to add in my button here. So I'm going to say input class, and I'm going to say btn, and I'm going to say btn-info. Okay, and what we can do is we can actually just leave it as a button. That's perfectly fine. And then I want to set the type here. So it's going to be a submit button, and the name here is going to be create task. Okay, so that is all that you want to do for now. So now what we can do is we can just restart our server. Right, and we can head on over to our main page. And as you can see here, we now have our submit button in place. But what we want to do is we want to ensure that we're able to reference our form appropriately. So as you can see here, I refer to it as form. And you can see that is not correct. We need to be very careful here. So you need to make sure that you reference according to the key here that you define. So it needs to be task form and not form. So the reason I'm showing you this error here is so that you understand the concept of key value pairs. So it needs to be task form. So you can copy that and you can just refer to it like such. And now you can go ahead and refresh. And now you can see we can go ahead and add in our tasks and they'll be displayed right down here as we add them in. As you can see, we are going to essentially redirect to the same page on the action once we've made our post request, which we're going to define here in our view here. Okay, so remember that is the important concept to remember with your keys here. So that key always needs to be referred in your HTML. As you can see here, task form is from the following, and tasks here is of course going to be set right here. So keep in mind that distinction. All right, so that's how we can go ahead and create our model form. Very important to remember how to follow that process. Right, so let's go ahead and create a task. But before we do that, there's just one thing I want to explain. So as you can see here, we have taskform.title. Now, as you know, taskform here is in reference to the key that we specified here, which was task form. Now, if we head on back, we can see we have a .title. Now, this .title here is referring to what we defined in our model forms here as this title right here, and that's going to pertain to the text input, which has the placeholder for adding a new task. So that is what we see here on our web page here for adding in a new task. So I just wanted to clarify so that you're aware of that. Okay, so let's continue. So now we want to be able to create a task. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to follow a few steps. So essentially, we can go on ahead and head on over to our views.py file. So we want to go here and we just want to add in the functionality that's required. So right after we grab all of our task objects, what we want to do is we want to go on ahead and set up a request here. So we can go ahead and say if the request.method is equals to that of a post request. So if we're expecting a post request, then what we want to do is we want to set the form to the task form. And as you can see here, that is the task form that we have here. However, what we want to do is if we are sending out a post request when the submit button is clicked, we want to check for that post request and then we want to send whatever is within this task form here, and we want to send it as a post request. So if there is a task in that form here, we want to say request.post. Okay. Then we want to check if this form is valid, so if there are any errors with it or any issues with this form. So we can just say if form.is_valid. And then we just want to say form.save, and that's officially going to push that task to our database. So that task that we enter in here, when we say submit, we're just going to officially send it to our database. And if for some reason it's not valid, we just want to redirect to the same page. Now, in order to redirect, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to ensure that you add in that shortcut. So it's from the Django.shortcuts module. You want to add in a comma here next to render and say redirect. So we can scroll down, and right here in line of this if statement, you can go ahead and say return redirect. And here in quotes, you can just put in a /. Okay, and that's just going to redirect to the same page either way. Okay, so that is what you need to set up into place to create a task. So what we can do now is we can just go on ahead and restart our server. Go and just refresh. And now let's go ahead and add in the task. So I'm going to say water the plants, and we can say submit. And there we go, we can see it says water the plants. So that's how we can create a task. Very simple and straight to the point. So make sure you've gone ahead and set up the relevant functionality that we have defined as follows. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to update a task. So that's the next thing that we want to set up. Now it's a little bit messy here, so what we want to do is we just want to clear this up so it's a little bit cleaner, and then we can go ahead and add in the functionality required for updating a task. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to create a new template for this. So we can go to our tasks app, go to templates, and what you want to do is right click on your templates directory, say new file, and we're going to call this update-task.html. So you want to create this template as follows, so make sure you've gone ahead and done just that. And after which, you want to head on over to your views.py file. So we'll go here and we're going to create a new view here. So right at the bottom here, just add in some space, we can go ahead and say def, and we're going to call this update task as the name of our view. We want to pass through a request and add in the pass statement for now to ensure we can just create this basic view that we've set here called update task. Next, you want to go to your urls.py file, so we can add that right here, and we want to create a dynamic URL to ensure that we're able to update our tasks. So I'll show you how that process unfolds. So here we're going to create a new URL. So the pass here we're going to set as follows. So it's going to be update-task is the route name, and now we want to make this URL dynamic. So we're going to add in a / and an opening angle bracket that's going to say str::pk. And you want to close the angle bracket and add in the /. I'll explain this in a moment. Then you want to relate to that view that you want to enact this on. So you can say views dot, and it's going to pertain to this view here, update task. So I'm going to say update task. And then you want to add in the name here, and that's going to be set to update-task. That's what I'm going to refer to it as, and just make sure you add in a comma at the end. So as we can see, this URL is going to be dynamic. So essentially speaking, what we want to do is we want to ensure that we are able to update our tasks. So what happens is this URL is going to be triggered and it's going to hold the dynamic value of the task itself here. And pk we're going to, of course, reference in our views.py file here. So here with request, we're also going to make this view kind of dynamic as well. I'm going to pass in pk. So we're going to essentially grab the dynamic value that gets passed in this URL, and then it's going to trigger this view, and this view here is then going to grab that dynamic value that we have specified in our URL, and it's going to utilize it in the functionality that we perform in this view. But I'll go into more detail as we continue with the process for updating a task. So what you want to do now is you can remove pass, and we want to go ahead and say task equals, and we already have our task object our task model imported, so we're going to refer to this model here. So here you can just say task.objects.get according to the ID equals pk. So we're going to work based on the ID of our tasks. So from our task model, we want to look at the ID attribute or ID field according to pk, which is going to be that dynamic value that's passed through here accordingly, that we want to grab and compare so that we know which task we are grabbing once we click on this URL. Okay, now once we have that particular task here, what we're going to do is we're then again going to say form is equals to task form. And in here, as you can see before, when we created a task here, we also kept it empty. And by keeping it empty here, we can see there's nothing that is within that particular form. So what we want to do in this case is we want to essentially be able to pass through an instance that we can already see in that task. So here by task form, we're going to set the instance equals to the task so that we are able to see the current task that we want to update. Okay, so that is the whole purpose of this. Then what we want to do is we want to create our check if we're having a post request and update the instance. So it's going to be very similar to what we did here with creating a task. So actually what we can do to save time here and ensure everything is working smoothly, we can actually go ahead and copy what we have here. And here by the update task, we can paste this in, and I will explain what we need to do. There are adjustments here. So let's just go ahead and make sure we're in line here, and like so. Okay, so let's see what we need to adjust. So we want to check if we're expecting a post request. This is perfectly understandable. Then what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and ensure that we update that particular task that we have. So we're going to say form equals task form, and again we're going to, like before, submit whatever is in a field that we have here, and that is what we want to do. And we want to do this based on the particular instance of the task that's passed through. So we want to update the instance according to that particular task. Then what we want to do is, let's go ahead and indent this here. We then want to check if the form is valid like before, and if it is, we can go ahead and ensure that we save all of this to our database. Okay, so that is what we want to ensure that we actually do in this process. So make sure you go on ahead and set that up accordingly. Now, in this case here, I also want to redirect to the home page here. So I'm not going to, in the case that we had before, add in an action. Okay, I'm going to leave this blank. So I want to handle this in my view for the redirect. So I'm now just going to add it in like such. All right, now we need to pass in our context dictionary that we have had before. So we can add that in. So we want to pass through our form here that we have. So let's go ahead and copy what we had before. Okay, and that's going to be in line of our post request. Okay, there we go. And what we want to do essentially is we just want to change this up. So it's going to be our task form here. Okay, and remember our update task.html is now going to take place instead of task.html. So we're going to say update-task.html, and we're going to pass through that context dictionary accordingly here to update task. Okay, and this is going to look exactly like we specified before with what we had. Okay, so what we can do now is we can just have a look at our logic here. So make sure I'll zoom out here so you can see what we have specified here accordingly. Okay, so make sure you've got that into place. Now, the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and add in the form logic. So again, we can go to task.html and we can just go ahead and copy this, go to update task, and I just want to make this empty. And this is going to be called update task. We're going to expect a post request. We need our CSRF token. And of course, in this case here, we are going to just go ahead and leave it as a task form just for the time being. So we just have that form. So let's just go ahead and just leave it like that. We will return to this in a moment, and we have a submit button, and it's going to be update task. Like such. Okay, so this is what we're going to have in place. Now we need an entry point to trigger this URL for update task. Okay, so we need to pass in a placeholder of sorts for that dynamic value, because we want to be able to update the task from our task.html here. So we need to add in an entry point here for each task that gets shown here. So what you can do essentially is you can go ahead and add in a link here. So I'm going to say href, and we're going to set a URL. And we're going to say update-task, close that, and you want to close this like such. And that's referring to the route name here in our URL, which is like such. And then we need to put in a placeholder here to what we want to pass through in this URL so that we can grab it in this view here as PK and grab that task ID. So what we can do is pass through the task ID here. So we're going to say task .id, so we want to pass that through, and then we're just going to highlight this update link with the name update right next to it. Okay, so this is what we want to do and what we want to set up. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and run the server. There we go. So we've got that all set up and ready to go, and we can go back to our home page and let's just refresh. And as you can see, we now have the opportunity to update all these objects. So here we can see we can update this task, we can update this task, update our task here. Now it may be clearer to add it below, so that might be a better option. So you can add in your task above, so it's a little bit more understandable. So you can see for each task we have that opportunity to update them, and you can see if you look at the bottom left that dynamic value that's being passed. So here we have, for example, 1, 2, 3, 5, and that is based on this task ID, and this task ID essentially is that dynamic value that's here, and this is that URL. This is the part of the route name that we include in this URL here, which is essentially going to, like I said, be used to trigger our view here, which is going to grab that dynamic URL, which essentially is that ID, for it to perform the functionality to get the object, and then of course pass through that instance. So let's continue. So let's say I want to update complete video tutorial. So I'm going to say update here. It's going to take me to the following page here. And as you can see here in the URL, we have update-task and 1. So this is the dynamic value that you can see right here. Then we can see we have the title, which is complete video tutorial. We can see the completed is checked, and we can see we have an option to say submit. Okay, so this is how we want to update our task. So we can see this is set for each instance that we have here. So buy food, watch movies, and water the plant. So a concept I want to explain now is if we go to our views.py file, you can see here that here by update task, we have form equals task form. Now, if I remove this instance equals task, save it and refresh. Oh, I need to, yeah, it's fine. Go to update. You can now see it has nothing in it. It just has added in a new task. Okay, so it's just adding in the blank task form that we specified in our model form. Now you need to put an instance equals task so that you have a unique instance per task here that you're clicking on. So if I refresh here, it's going to show the particular instance of that task for the first object. If I go to the next one, it's going to show that particular instance of that task for the second object, and the third and the fourth, etc. So that's the whole purpose of adding an instance equals task. As we know, this if request or method equals post is we're just checking if a post request is going to be triggered from this form here in our HTML, to which we have binded it to the render option right down here. Then what we're doing is we're going to essentially go ahead and send a post request to our database, and we're going to update it based on that task that we have here. So that instance, we want to ensure that we send a post request based on that instance which is currently set and the update for that instance that has been set. Then we want to check if the form is valid and if it's free of errors, and then we can post this data to our database, and we can redirect, of course, to the home page after updating it. So if I were to change this to complete video tutorial 2 and say completed and say submit, it's going to redirect me to the home page that I'm currently at, as we can see here, and it says complete video tutorial 2. Okay, I can go to update again. I can just remove that and say submit. Okay, so it says complete video tutorial. So that is how you can go about updating your tasks accordingly and set them up as they should be. So remember, we can see that we've added the necessities into place, and we've added in the entry point here so that we can go to that unique instance that we have set. So again, if we click here on update, it's going to go and trigger this URL to pass through this URL here, which is going to trigger the update task view. Okay, so that is how you can go ahead and add in functionality to update a task. Next, we're going to learn how to delete a task. So again, let's close this up so we can start from scratch so that we understand the process which is going to be correlated. Alright, so let's learn now how to delete a task. So like before, we can go to our tasks app, go to our templates directory, and what you want to do is you want to right click on templates, say new file, and we're going to call this delete-task.html, and you can press enter. Alright, so what we can do is we can also just borrow the heading here and just replace it and say delete task. Okay, great. So we've got our template set. Now the next thing that I want us to do is to just go ahead and add in some markup here. So we're just going to say with our paragraph tag, are you sure that you want to delete this task? Just like such. So I'll just make that bigger for you. So are you sure that you want to delete this task? And then we just want to have a URL that's going to allow us to return back to our homepage in the event that we don't delete this task. So we can just say here ahref and say equals, and we're just going to set that URL. And in our case, it's going to be an empty string, which we can leave it as, and we can just say cancel. And that's going to redirect us back to our main URL. Okay, so that is what we need for delete task for the moment. So what we can do now is head on back to Explorer, and now we want to set up our views and URLs. So we can go to views.py and urls.py, and we're going to follow a similar process. So in our views.py, we have update task. Now let's go ahead and create a view for delete task. So I'm going to say def, and I'm going to say delete task, and pass in request, add in the colon, and we're just going to add in the pass statement for now. We can go to urls.py, and we want to go on ahead and create another dynamic URL. So again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pass through a dynamic value. So we're going to just call this delete dash task, and the name here will say delete dash task, and the view here, so we have it here as delete task. So I'm going to set this as delete task. Okay, so make sure you've got that all set up and into place. Then we can return, of course, to our views.py file, and again we want to pass through that dynamic value. So pk, we're going to reference it to our dynamic value that's been passed through. So in our views, we can then add in the functionality to delete a task. It'll be very straightforward. So first of all, you just want to get that current task. So we can see here, we set the same thing. So we can just say task equals task.objects.get with the ID equals to pk, so that dynamic value that we're expecting. Then I want to say if the request.method is equals to that of a post request. I want to say task.delete, and that's going to delete that task. And I can say return redirect, and I'm going to redirect it back to my home page. And then here I want to set my context dictionary here, and of course that's going to pertain to my is going to pertain to that particular task here. So that's something that you can pass on through. So here I'm just going to set it as task, and the value here as task. Then I'm going to say return render. We're going to pass through that request, and we're going to utilize the delete-task.html template, pass through that context dictionary as follows. So you want to just go ahead and pass that through. And the reason that we're passing in this task itself is because we want to reference it in delete task. So where we are saying here, are you sure that you want to delete this task? We just want to add next to it in curly braces that particular task itself here. That's why we're referencing it accordingly here as an extra context dictionary. So here I'm just going to pass through task. Okay, so that's what we need to do. The next thing that you also want to do is you want to go ahead and add in form logic in your delete task.html to actually delete the task. So if you're sure that you want to delete this task, okay, we're just going to go on ahead and add in a form here. So we can just say form method is equals to that of a post request. You can leave that action. Okay. And what you want to do is you just want to pass through your CSRF token. Excuse me. And then you just want to add in your button. So input type submit, and the name here I'm just going to set as confirm deletion. Yeah, right, there we go. So that's just going to allow us to delete that particular task, and we can see it here according to what we went ahead and passed through. Okay, so that's what we need to do. And of course you need that dynamic URL. So we can go to our task.html page. And again, we need to go ahead and copy this. and we're going to call this delete task. The link will be called delete. And again, we're referring to this dynamic URL here. So delete task, we're passing through that dynamic value, and that dynamic value is based on the task IDs that we're looping through our tasks, which we stipulated if we look here at the top that we are selecting all of those tasks. Okay, so make sure you've got in the following functionality to delete a task. As you can see here, it's in place. Then you can refer to what we've added here to delete a task here, and we want to be able to confirm the deletion, and we're just adding an entry point here so we can go to the delete-task.html page to actually delete a task. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go on ahead and try this process. So let's just restart our server. So let's see how we can delete a task. Let's refresh. Now we have delete here right next to it. If you want this underneath, you can just add in 2 breakpoints, for example. That will space it nicely, and there we go. So what we can do here is we can go ahead and delete it. So let's say we want to delete this task. You can see it's passing in that delete-task route name and the dynamic value right next to it. So let's say I want to delete watch movies here. So I'm going to say delete. And it says, are you sure that you want to delete this task, watch movies? So as you can see here, it is passing through what we have passed through the task, which we are receiving here from that dynamic value here, and we're passing it through as a context dictionary, and we're referring to that task as task here as the key, which is being rendered right here. And then we can confirm deletion, or we can cancel, which will take us to our home page. So if I say cancel, it's going to take us back here to where we were. But if I were to go back to say delete and say submit, it removes it, as we can see. So now we only have 3 tasks left. All right, so that is how we can go ahead and add in CRUD functionality for a task-based application. So if we have various tasks that we want to be able to read, create, update, and delete. So we can also add in some more space. So let's do that. So let's remove this. So here we have tasks, and I just want to add in a breakpoint right here. So I just want to adjust this. Okay, and right at the top as well. So we separate all of the tasks here. Okay, let's see, we might need to adjust this actually. Let's see, let's do it one by one. Okay. Let's do that. Okay, so that looks a little bit more cleaner. So we just need to add in that breakpoint at the end. So just excuse me. There we go. All right, so just a little bit of moving around here and there. Okay, so that's how we can also delete a task, and that's how you can add in that functionality into place. All right, so that's it for this video tutorial on creating a task-based application. Now the final thing that I want to go through is the demonstration, so you can see the whole thing together. So let's go ahead and do that. So I just want to restart my server. Bit of a habit here, so let's just do that, and let's go through the whole process. All right, so we want to be able to create a task, so let's do that. So here I'm going to say attend work meeting, submit. Okay, I'm able to create a task. Now I want to be able to read a task. So here we can read all of the tasks here after they've been created. Here on this page here on the index.html page, we can read all of our tasks. Now we want to update a task. So here, attend work meeting, I'm going to say update, and I'm going to switch this over to, let's say attend work. Instead of attend work meeting, I'm going to say, let's switch this to attend budgets meeting. And we can see that's been updated. Let's go to delete. I want to delete this task, attend budgets meeting, and say submit. It's been deleted. So as you can see there, we've integrated the whole process here into place. Now let's say we also want to show the completed status as well. So if we go to update, we have completed as well. So let's say we also want to ensure that is set up and into place. So what we need to do, of course, let's just review our markup. So here we have our title. we have completed as well, and that pertains to update a task. So if we go to tasks, to templates, and we look at update tasks, we can see here we have that task form being outdated successfully here. So we can go ahead, for example, to tasks, and let's say that we want to output completed into place. So it's going to show true or false. So that is what we're going to be seeing there. So we can just go ahead and add something extra down below here, and let's say here task dot completed. Okay, and as we know, if we were to let's head on back. Let's refresh here. It's going to show true, false, false. So right next to it, we can just go ahead and add in a statement here to say is completed, or is completed, or I can just check here for pending. Okay, and we can say pending here. And we can see here at the end, okay, it is true, false, false. But what we can do to make this a lot cleaner and a lot more beneficial to us is we can actually go on ahead and add in a bit of an if statement logic here to compare the states that we are receiving here. So I'll show you how you can do that to make this look a little bit cleaner so we can see the whole process a lot better and a lot more concise. So first of all, we want to just make sure that we just want to make sure that we've got this set up into place. So we can see we've got everything here as it should be. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and add in some if statement functionality. Right, so what we can do is let's go ahead and remove pending for now. And we can show the task that have been completed. And instead of showing it in such a way, we can transform this into an if statement. So let me show you how you can do that. So we can remove this, and you can just in filters say if, and you want to say task dot completed is equals to true. So if it is completed, we can then add in a paragraph tag that says task completed, colon, and then you want to say true. Then if it's not true, you can add in an else statement. And again, you want to nest within that, and you just want to repeat the same thing here. And you can just go ahead and say false. Now what you can also do is set this to yes to make it more readable, more human friendly. And that's exactly what I wanted to do. And you can just say end if here at the end. And there we go. And there we have it. So let's go ahead and test this out. So we want to start our server. And refresh. And there we go. We can see if that task has been completed or not. We can see task completed no, task completed no, task completed yes. And we just use a sprinkle of an if statement here in line of our templates to see, okay, if that task was completed and it's true, we can just output the statement yes. And if it's not, we can just output the statement no. So let's prove it to see it works. So task completed yes. If I say update, we can see it says completed. If I go to this one, we can see it's not completed. And this one not completed as well. So we have that also showing for us. So if I were to remove this here from task completed, remove it, submit, it's going to show now. And let's say by food, I go to update, completed, submit. You can see it shows yes. Okay, so that's just a bit of extra functionality. You can also add in bonus functionality to add into place here with making your comparisons. All right, guys, so that's it for this video tutorial on creating our task application. All right, so that's it for this video and everything that has been set up into place and completed. And as always, thank you for support, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.